122nd edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good! Off the glass! Oklahoma calls timeout, but the game is over! The game is over! Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma! And ready on his second attempt. That one is no good! They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores!
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. It's over! Carolina has won the national championship! And how about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions!
The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions!
You competed. And that's what it takes to win big-time games. You've got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart, too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. We have reached the rematch with Duke as the regular season will come to an end in Cameron Indoor Stadium Saturday night. Carolina is riding a 3-game win streak after winning on their senior night Tuesday against Wake Forest, 93-83. An impressive home win for Carolina as they've continued an improved brand of basketball these last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, buddy, we've been tracking Carolina's chances of trying to get to at least Wednesday of the ACC tournament. That is no longer a possibility. Carolina will have to win 5 games in 5 days if they hope to make the NCAA tournament.
Yep, way to go, Virginia Tech. Congratulations. Can't beat Clemson.
Yep. And
or beat Clemson, excuse me.
But you know, before that, they've got a chance to redeem themselves against Duke. We all know what happened in the first matchup, but regardless, it feels good. It feels weird that College Game Day is not at Duke, Carolina, the final Saturday of the season. I couldn't tell you the last time that they weren't there on the final Saturday because it feels like in our lifetime they've always been, whether it's been in Chapel Hill or in Cameron, they're there to break down that game and relive another chapter in the rivalry. But it's still a big game for Carolina as they're trying to carry that momentum into the ACC tournament, which will ultimately determine their postseason fate. And it's a big game for Duke. They haven't played great as of late. Coach K has got a little testy with the media, with people criticizing his coaching. So, the records aren't what they normally are. The ACC regular season is on the line, but still a big game when these two teams meet up.
Yeah, College Game Day is probably regretting their decision to not come to this game because now all of a sudden this game looks a lot different than it looked a couple of weeks ago. There are some pretty substantial things on the line. Of course, for Carolina, it's not something that is going to be tangible or noticeable like Duke, which will be what seeding they will end up probably being in the NCAA tournament, because really, unless they lose earlier or go later than we expect them to in the ACC tournament, they're probably going to lock up their seeding here with their final game of the regular season. So I think it's a big game for Duke. It's a big game for Carolina because it's going to be one of those games where if you win, you carry a lot of momentum into the ACC tournament. If you lose, you're probably still going to be feeling decent about your chances because Duke is still a really good team. But if you win, I think that would be the thing that Carolina needs heading into the ACC tournament, to feel confident that they can play with anybody in the ACC. Because as we talked about when we were recapping the game against Wake Forest, I mean, yeah, Carolina's on a 3-game win streak, and it's great, and I hate to be this guy because I still think it's very impressive considering where the team was just a couple of weeks ago. But they haven't beaten anybody that is on the level of Duke, and they haven't beaten anybody on the level of the teams that they're going to face if they get to the semifinals of the ACC tournament. So this is going to kind of prove whether or not Carolina actually has a legitimate chance of making a run and give people a ton of confidence, or if you're just going to kind of have to go in blindly supporting this team and hoping that they can find a way once they get to the semifinals, if they get that far, against a team that is going to be better than them, especially this season. So it's definitely a huge game for Carolina. There's a lot on the line. Of course, I mean, if it wasn't going to be a close game already because Carolina's starting to play better, the rivalry aspect alone was going to make it a close game. So it's going to be one of those games that I think we're extremely excited to be able to sort of have a chance to play a small part of. I know we're going to be on Franklin Street, not in Cameron Indoor Stadium, but it still feels like we're going to be a part of something special, hopefully, when that game ends on Saturday.
It's always something special when these two teams and these two programs meet on the basketball court, no matter the setting. These are arguably the two best programs in the sport. You've got the two best head coaches in the sport and two of the better fan bases in the sport. So it's always something special. And it's why whenever we do this portion of the podcast, this is the one game that twice or 3 times a year, it gets its own different flavor because the Duke game requires that kind of special attention, and we'll start that with the opening tip.
This is the opening tip.
And so what I thought we would do with this is the second year of the Roy's Boys podcast, since it rebooted after the first time we tried to get it up and running a couple years ago, is look back at the first year of the podcast when we covered last year's game in Cameron Indoor Stadium. That was a game where Carolina and Duke entered number 1 versus number 8. Arguably, probably the most hyped Tar Heel Blue Devil game we have been a part of. Mainly because there was a guy that Duke featured in the name of Zion Williamson that was going to be must-watch TV. There were always celebrities in the house when these two teams get together. Barack Obama, most notably, was in the house, and it was everything that I think Carolina and Duke is supposed to be. It was a late tip, 2 top 10 teams. You were going to learn a lot about each other, and I think we left that game after Carolina went into Cameron, and of course the game is most fans remember because Zion blew his shoe out. But Carolina simply dominated the Blue Devils, mainly on the interior. It 62 points inside the paint. And I know for me individually was the first time that I legitimately looked at them and thought they could win the national championship. Of course they didn't, but that was when it finally set in. This team is not only ACC title good, they're national title good. And when you can go into Cameron and do what they did, Luke May with 30 and 15, Cameron Johnson was sensational. Kobe White wasn't even Kobe White just yet. He was kind of getting to that point where he was going to give you 20 to 25 every game. Man, it was fun. It was exciting. We were at a bar yelling and screaming and hooping and hollering, and it was a fun game. And it's always fun when you get that win on the road. And I've always said there's no better noise in sports than a quiet Cameron Indoor.
Yeah, I mean, Luke May's performance, I think, is what I remember most from that game because it was just kind of unexpected. Like, we knew he had dominated NC State before, but everybody coming into the game was talking about how Zion was going to shut down Luke May. It was going to be a dominant performance. Luke May would look like the player that he was when he first came to Carolina. It just wouldn't be any competition. And he ends up blowing out his shoe, and that pretty much became the headline of a game where Carolina really just outplayed him. Kobe White, again, didn't look like Kobe White at that point that we came to know and love, and now is starting to look like that type of player in the NBA that we all thought he could become. But that was probably the game where we looked at him, especially after he made that unbelievable dribble drive through 3 or 4 defenders. That was just ridiculous and will probably live on in your mind forever. I'm pretty sure you wake up and think about that every single day of your life because you're a man that just loves those technical aspects of the game. But I think that just for him to be able to play as well as he did in that game as a freshman just showed what we were hoping he would eventually become, and unfortunately what ended up leading him to the NBA. We would, of course, wish he was still on this team, but I mean, I think that's kind of what is going to happen in this game on Saturday night. I don't know if Cole Anthony, will end up challenging himself, feeling that he didn't play great in that first game, because I feel like that was really not a bad performance from Cole Anthony. It wasn't a great performance from Cole Anthony, but still wasn't a bad performance. One of the better ones of the year prior to this 3-game win streak that Carolina's on. But I feel like now the confidence is there, especially with how well he's playing with Garrison Brooks and Christian Keeling, along with now Brandon Robinson might be getting into that rotation. He's moving the ball so much better. So it's going to be interesting not only to see how Carolina adjusts to what happened in that first game. I don't know if Duke is going to be ready for this Carolina team because they're thinking that they're playing the same team that they played in the first game when these two teams met. This is not going to be a Carolina team where if they get up by 13, they're going to roll over. The team we've seen in the last 3 games is much more confident and right now is starting to shoot the ball a lot better from the perimeter. So I think Carolina is going to come in with a lot of confidence to this game, and it's going to be different. And I hope it's something like that game that we saw last year in Cameron. I mean, we're probably going to be just as rowdy at yet again another bar to watch this one, and hopefully the guys bring the same effort that they brought in that game a year ago and can pull out the victory.
Coach K made the comment in the post game when they won in Chapel Hill a few weeks ago that what you saw on the floor was Carolina in terms of the way that they played the game. And it was really him just giving Carolina a compliment and respecting us in a bad year. But it was also a lie. That wasn't Carolina. What Carolina is what you've seen the last 3 games, and of course it coincides with the winning. It's the scoring the ball. They've scored at least 85 or more in 3 straight games, back-to-back over 90 for the first time all year long. They're shooting the ball efficiently. They are connecting on 3-pointers more consistently. They're hitting foul shots. They're still rebounding and getting enough stops on the defensive end. They look like the team that, when I looked at the roster over the summer, I thought this is as deep a team as he's had since that 2012 team. This is as good as a team that he's probably had inside out since the team that won the national championship. Of course, none of that came to fruition. Injuries and the lack of continuity on the team really shot that to hell. But you've now seen in late February, early March, Carolina is where they are under Roy Williams. They are playing their best basketball, as they normally are this time of year. Cole Anthony has settled into the point guard role. It took him a little while adjusting, coming back after missing basically a month and a half of games, and you can't fault the kid for that. He's learned how to play with Garrison Brooks. They became the first duo to score 25 or more consecutive games since Larry Miller and Bobby Lewis, the LMN boys, did it back in the 65-66 season against Ohio State and Richmond, respectively. That's a long time to have that, and that's a really good duo to be in conversation with. And so that's what Carolina's got to do in this game. We all know what